The ballroom had fallen silent, every jeweled head turning toward the entrance, as if an unseen command had stilled the air. And then she appeared, Nora Bennett, the overlooked assistant they had mocked for years, stepping through the grand doors of the Langford in a midnight blue dress that seemed to shimmer with defiance. The chandeliers caught her silver earrings, her hair cascading in soft waves, and for a moment, the entire room forgot to breathe. Brooke Collins' smile froze. Owen Barrett's smirk died on his lips, and even Mason Hartley, the man who invited her as a cruel joke, stood speechless. Whispers rippled like fire through the crowd. Who is she? That's Hartley's assistant. But Nora did not falter. She walked as though the ballroom had been built for her, and when her calm voice broke the silence, the night itself shifted. Nothing and no one would ever be the same again. The mahogany table gleamed under the boardroom lights, stretching like a silent witness to the quiet war of glances and half-hidden smirks. Behind Mason Hartley, Manhattan's skyline glimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a conquered city resting at his feet. Mason, polished and precise, sat at the head of the table. He never needed to raise his voice. Power spoke loud enough in the weight of his silence. Beside him lounged Owen Barrett, his longtime partner. Owen's laugh was jagged and cruel, the kind that cut as it rang out. He twirled his cufflinks idly as though the meeting existed solely for his amusement. Across from them sat Brooke Collins, Mason's fiancée, radiant in silk and dripping with diamonds. Her engagement ring flashed like a weapon every time she lifted her water glass, as if to remind everyone she had claimed Mason, and through him, everything he commanded. At the far end of the table sat Nora Bennett, silently arranging documents. Her dark hair was pinned back her blouse, plain her face unreadable. To most, she was invisible. To Brooke, she was a thorn, a shadow too close to Mason's world. Nora kept her head down, but she caught the whispers, the subtle mockery, the unspoken reminder that she did not belong. The conversation shifted from numbers to the firm's annual gala, a night of glittering excess at the Langford Grand, where wealth paraded itself like theater. Brooke leaned forward, her tone sharp beneath a sweet veneer. Mason, darling, I trust you'll be selective with the invitations. Not everyone belongs in a ballroom. Owen chuckled darkly. Imagine the office staff crashing the gala secretaries, fumbling with champagne interns, gawking at the art. Nora here might even show up in her office uniform. Brooke laughed, brittle and bright. Then her eyes found Nora's, gleaming with disdain. She wouldn't dare. Would she? Mason tapped his pen, then finally lifted his gaze to Nora. The silence tightened. Nora Bennett, he said evenly, you're invited to the gala this Saturday evening. For a moment, the room froze. Owen's grin widened. Brooke's lips curled in satisfaction. They waited for embarrassment, excuses, a stumble. Instead, Nora calmly aligned her papers and met Mason's eyes. Thank you, Mr. Hartley, she replied evenly. I'll consider it. The word consider dropped like a stone in the room. Brooke's smile stiffened. Consider? Do you have something better to do on a Saturday night? Nora's gaze sharpened, quiet steel flashing beneath her calm. I always have options, Miss Collins. Some simply aren't worth my time. The silence was suffocating. Owen coughed nervously, unsure whether to laugh. Brooke's painted smile cracked at the edges. And Mason found himself staring at the woman he had overlooked for years, unsettled by a rising sense he could not name. Nora gathered her notebook and walked toward the door. She paused briefly, her hand on the frame. One question, Mr. Hartley. Does this invitation come with any particular intention? Mason's throat tightened. Brooke's eyes drilled into him. Owen leaned forward like a vulture. Mason lied smoothly, though his voice rang hollow. We just want everyone to have a good time. Nora studied him for a heartbeat, then nodded. I understand. Good afternoon. She closed the door behind her, leaving silence in her wake. Owen forced a laugh. Did you hear that? Options? She thinks she's royalty. Brooke's laugh followed, too sharp, too brittle. She'll regret this. Watching her try to fit in will be entertainment enough. But Mason said nothing. His eyes lingered on the door, his certainty cracking in ways he did not expect. By the time Nora reached the lobby, whispers already trailed her like sparks. Interns stared as though she had done something daring. The assistant had been invited to the gala. Word flew through the building like wildfire, fueled by Brooke herself. That night, she sat in a private lounge across from Owen, laughing cruelly as she painted Nora's plain face and quiet voice in mocking detail. But Nora, back in her modest apartment in Queens, sat quietly on the worn sofa. Her younger brother Caleb closed his textbook when he saw her expression. "What happened? I was invited to the gala," she said flatly. "Invited or ordered?" he asked. "Both. They don't want me there to celebrate. They want to laugh at me." Caleb leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then you know what that means. They're afraid of you." Nora smiled bitterly. "I'm just an assistant, Caleb." "No, you're more than they see," he said firmly, "and you've survived worse than their laughter." Nora's thoughts drifted to the small wooden box hidden under her bed. Inside, a midnight blue dress had waited for years, folded with care, untouched by time. Her hands itched to reach for it. Outside, the city roared oblivious. Inside, a storm was building. If they wanted her at the gala, she would go. But she would not walk in as their joke. She would walk in on her own terms. The Langford Grand gleamed like a cathedral of wealth, its chandeliers casting rivers of light across the marble floor, polished to a mirror's shine. Every corner of the ballroom buzzed with conversation, laughter rehearsed to perfection, champagne glasses clinking like symbols of privilege. Investors, politicians, and socialites mingled as though they were the rightful rulers of Manhattan, their eyes constantly scanning, measuring, judging. Near the entrance, Mason Hartley stood tall in his tailored suit, Brooke Collins clinging to his arm like a queen guarding her throne. Her golden gown shimmered under the lights, but her smile was sharper than the diamonds around her neck. Owen Barrett hovered close, already mocking the idea of Nora Bennett's arrival. "If she dares to show," he murmured with a grin, "she'll be swallowed whole in 5 minutes." But Mason couldn't help glancing toward the double doors. His chest tightened with something he refused to name: curiosity, unease, perhaps guilt. Brooke noticed and pressed her nails into his arm. "Stop looking," she whispered. "She won't come. She knows her place." The master of ceremonies called for dinner, and guests began moving toward their seats. Then the hum of voices fell silent, as though someone had pulled an invisible string through the room. The doors opened. Nora Bennett stood framed in golden light. For a heartbeat, the ballroom forgot how to breathe. She wore the midnight blue dress, simple yet timeless, its fabric gliding like water as she moved. Her hair, no longer pinned back, fell in loose waves across her shoulders. She wore no glittering crown, only a pair of silver earrings that caught the chandelier's glow. And yet she outshone every jewel in the room. Whispers rippled. "Who is she?" "That's Hartley's assistant." Shocked disbelief spread faster than champagne. Mason's throat went dry. Brooke's grip on his arm nearly drew blood. Owen's grin faltered. Nora walked slowly, every step deliberate, as though she belonged here more than anyone else. She reached Mason and offered the faintest nod. "Good evening, Mr. Hartley. Thank you for the invitation." Her voice, calm and steady, cut through the silence like music. Mason found himself blurting words he didn't plan. "You look different." Nora's lips curved into a soft smile, transforming her face from quiet assistant to undeniable queen. "Different. I only put on a dress, Mr. Hartley. Nothing more." The ballroom erupted in whispers again. The trap had snapped, but not on her. Brooke, desperate to regain control, leaned forward with venom disguised as charm. "How interesting," she said loudly enough for others to hear. "Tell me, Nora, did you buy that dress just for tonight?" Nora lifted her gaze. "Actually, no. I've had it for years. Sometimes the simplest things last the longest." Her words landed with quiet force. Around the table, guests exchanged glances. Brooke's golden gown suddenly seemed too loud, too desperate. Owen tried to laugh. "Surely it must be difficult for you to adapt to gatherings like this. It's a very different world from the one you know." Nora sipped her wine before replying, her tone steady. "People are not so different, Mr. Barrett. Whether rich or poor, everyone wants respect. Everyone wants to be heard. Wealth changes circumstances, not humanity." The table stilled. A few nodded. Others looked away shaken. Brooke's smile cracked. Her voice rose brittle. "But surely you must feel out of place. After all, you're only an assistant." Nora set down her fork and studied Brooke as though peering through glass. "Tell me, Miss Collins," she asked softly, "have you ever worked a job where if you didn't, your rent wouldn't be paid?" The words fell like thunder. Gasps echoed. Brooke's lips parted, but no answer came. Nora leaned back, her tone soft but piercing. I don't judge you. Your world is yours. Mine is different, but both deserve to be seen. Before the silence could deepen, a man approached with a camera hanging from his neck. Connotalery Reeves, the American Ledger, he said eagerly. Excuse me, Miss Bennett, could I trouble you for a comment? You coordinated the literacy program in Paris 3 years ago, didn't you? It was one of the most successful initiatives of the decade. The room erupted in shock. Brooke went pale. Owen's smirk vanished. Mason felt the floor tilt beneath him. Nora blinked, once composed. Yes, she answered simply. Then a deeper voice cut through the crowd. Nora, my dear Nora. Heads turned as Ambassador Jean-Paul Morel strode into the ballroom, his stern features breaking into a rare smile. He clasped her hands warmly. What a joy to see you. This woman restored dignity to countless families in Paris. She is extraordinary. The crowd gasped. The ambassador turned to Mason, his voice sharp. Hartley, do you even realize the treasure you've had working under you? Mason opened his mouth but could not speak. Nora, her cheeks faintly flushed, lowered her eyes modestly. Thank you, Ambassador. But the work was never mine alone. Many voices built that program. I only carried the pieces together. But it was too late. The truth had spread across the ballroom like fire. Nora Bennett was no one's joke, no one's pawn. She was a force in her own right, and the gala no longer belonged to Brooke Collins or Owen Barrett. It belonged to her. The morning after the gala, New York woke to a different story than anyone expected. News outlets played the same clip on repeat. Nora Bennett stepping into the Langford Grand in her midnight blue dress, silencing the room with nothing more than dignity. Social media lit up with headlines like "The Assistant Who Stole the Gala" and "The Forgotten Heroine of Paris." Thousands of comments poured in, calling her grace under pressure, inspiring, unforgettable. Nora Bennett had become a symbol overnight. Inside Hartley Barrett Partners, chaos crackled like a live wire. Reporters crowded the lobby, investors demanded answers, and employees whispered Nora's name with awe. For 3 years, she had walked these halls invisible. Now she was the most visible person in the city. In his office, Mason Hartley sat with the newspaper open on his desk. Shame pressed down on him, heavier than the skyline outside. He remembered every sneer, every cruel laugh, every time he had let Owen or Brooke reduce Nora to nothing while he stayed silent. And then her voice from the gala echoed in his mind. Wealth changes circumstances, not humanity. The door burst open. Owen Barrett stormed in, his face red. This is a catastrophe, he barked, slamming the paper onto Mason's desk. We're the laughingstock of Wall Street because of her. Grant Ellison followed, his booming voice echoing through the office. If we don't fire her today, Mason, we lose everything. Clients, investors, the firm itself. Fire her or we'll move to remove you. Then Brooke Collins swept in, her golden gown traded for a storm of anger and smeared mascara. Do you know what they're saying about me? She hissed, waving her phone. Memes, Mason, strangers, laughing at me on the street. All because you invited her. Admit it, you defend her because you want her. Mason rose, his voice low but sharp as glass. Enough! His eyes swept over Owen, Grant, and Brooke, the very people who had shaped the company with him. It wasn't Nora who humiliated us. It was us. Our arrogance, our cruelty. That's what people saw. And they are right. Brooke's eyes narrowed. You're not the man I agreed to marry. No, Mason said quietly. I'm finally the man I should have been. That night, instead of hiding, Mason wrote. Alone in his penthouse, he drafted an open letter and sent it to the American Ledger. It wasn't polished nor softened by lawyers. It was raw, almost painful to read. He admitted that the gala invitation had begun as a cruel joke. He admitted the firm had set out to humiliate an employee and instead revealed its own corruption. He announced Nora Bennett's promotion to a leadership role and declared he would step back from daily operations until Hartley Barrett Partners was rebuilt on values that mattered. By sunrise, the letter had spread across the nation. Activists hailed it as accountability. Former clients called to say they respected the honesty. Reporters flooded the firm's doors chanting Nora's name. Brooke vanished from the city, her social image shattered. Owen and Grant fumed, but their threats rang hollow in the face of public outrage. Nora read the article in a small Queen's Cafe, Caleb and Maya at her side. Her hands trembled on the paper, not because she needed Mason's apology, but because for the first time someone had admitted the truth. "Is it enough?" Maya asked gently. Nora shook her head slowly. "It's a start, but the wounds don't vanish overnight. This was never about me alone. It's about what comes after for everyone who's been invisible for too long." That evening her phone buzzed. A message from Mason: "Meet me. One chance to speak face to face." She almost deleted it, but something, curiosity perhaps, or the quiet spark that had carried her into the gala, pushed her to go. They met not in a penthouse, not in a boardroom, but at the Bryant Park Book Fair beneath strings of light. Mason wore no armor of a suit, just a simple jacket. His arrogance had been stripped away. For the first time, he looked like a man, not a machine of power. "Nora," he said softly, "thank you for coming." She studied him carefully. "You've burned everything around you, Mason. Your reputation, your partners, your engagement." Why his voice shook, but the words were steady. "Because none of it mattered if it meant living blind. You showed me what it means to see. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to build something real, not above people, but beside them. And I can't do it without you." The fair's laughter and music swirled around them, but Nora's silence cut sharper than any sound. At last she spoke. "You once invited me as a joke, and I walked into that ballroom because I already knew who I was. I don't need your apology to confirm my worth, but if you're sincere, then prove it. Build something that matters, not for me, for them." She gestured toward the families, the students, the ordinary workers passing between the bookstalls. Mason nodded, his eyes clear for the first time. "Then let's begin. Not as boss and assistant, not as savior and victim, but as equals." Nora extended her hand. Mason didn't seize it in triumph. He took it gently, reverently, as if it were something fragile and sacred. Together they walked among the rows of books, unnoticed by most, but carrying with them a quiet promise. The cruel joke that had begun in a glittering boardroom had ended here in the heart of the city as something else entirely, a reminder that dignity cannot be mocked, that truth cannot be erased, and that real power doesn't come from money or titles, but from the courage to stand with your head held high. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. If you were, Nora, would you have agreed to work with him again or walked away for good? And finally, if this story touched you, comment 100 below, tell us what country you're watching from, and share this video so more people can feel this message of dignity and hope.